Tonight we're going to be here to launch the C4, which stands for the Center to Combat Corruption and Cronyism. As an average Malaysian, I think I'm beginning to be numbed by all these figures that are quoted about corruption in Malaysia. Nowadays, Malaysians, when we talk about corruption, we rattle off figures like 12 billion, 200 billion gone out of the country, 300 billion or whatever it is, as though it was just so much kangkong. So I did some research, my version of research on the internet to find out exactly how much 1 billion really is. Do you know how much 1 billion is? According to this website that I went to, if you started counting now, every second, 1, 2, 3, and didn't stop counting to sleep or eat or shit, and counted from now until the day you die, you would not have reached 1 billion. That's how much 1 billion is, you know. But for the people in charge of our country, it's like, nothing, you know. So, I'm very glad that you're all here tonight to participate in the launch of this Center to Combat Corruption and Cronyism, which has a very appropriate acronym of C4, right? I'm sure Cynthia thought about that long and hard before she came up with the name. Now, before we start with the actual presentations and speeches, I'd like to draw your attention to a little video that has been produced by the C4 people. It's a video that will be launched on the internet and shown on road shows and so on and so forth. And tonight is the first time that it's being shown to a public audience.
Ini Azman, seorang rakyat biasa. Azman bekerja di sektor swasta. Pendapatannya cukup untuk menyara hidup dan menampung keluarga. Hidup Azman sangat gembira. Sehinggalah muncul tangan-tangan hitam yang silih berganti pagi dan petang, siang dan malam. Kasihan Azman, tiada apa lagi yang tinggal. Nanti, apa lagi? Oh no. Tapi Azman tidak berputus asa. Dia cuba mengadu dan cuba meminta bantuan ke sana kemari, ke hulu ke hilir. Tapi sebaliknya suaranya yang dilenyapkan. Welcome to Malaysia. Ini semua kerana rasuah. Tahukah anda betapa seriusnya rasuah di negara kita? Kapal selam, pelabuhan kapal, macam-macam ada. Wow. Fuyo. Dan Malaysia juga terkenal di peringkat antarabangsa. Ya, mereka ambil rasuah. Tapi ini semua duit kita, duit cukai kita. Jangan biarkan ini berlaku kepada anda. Bertindak sekarang.
hope you enjoyed that video, and hopefully after this launch, the video will do what it's meant to do, to educate the Malaysian public about what really is going on with corruption. But that video also shows that corruption is good for one thing, for losing weight, right? Because you probably, by the end of the day, you won't have money to eat. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it's now my great pleasure to call upon the founder and co-director of the Center to Combat Corruption and Cronyism, Ms. Cynthia Gabriel.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me at the back? Yes? Okay. Do you all have your kangkong? No, I'm serious. I only see one person holding it up. Okay. Okay. Now, this is the moment, friends. This is the moment. We've been working to try and establish C4 for the last couple of months. So this is the moment, and I'm really glad to see an almost full hall. There's still some chairs to fill, but I'm also told there's a traffic jam. So we hope that by 8 p.m. this place will be full, because this is a message that we want to send to our political leaders that this is it. This is the center that has arrived. Together with the rest of civil society, we will combat corruption together. So let us welcome C4 into the fray with an explosive applause. The most explosive applause that we can give. Louder, big la, louder, louder. Explosion. Okay, now many people have asked me, including some of the pre-launch interviews, what? Another NGO? You all got nothing better to do, huh? Well, the truth is, this is not going to be just another NGO, but this is something work in progress that you and I and all of us gathered here and much more outside this room will actually need to make the central focus of our agenda, because we believe that this administration of ours, this government of ours, has actually been playing too many games with us until this kangkong thing has arrived to show how ridiculous the whole situation is. Am I right?
Yeah.
Ayo, your yes and all that is like not even energetic. Now, what does this represent? What does this represent? This represents a very special time that we are in, a post-general election moment when we find the government bullying us one after another, not just by implementing more unjust laws, as we saw in the last parliament session, but now it's payback time. It's payback time because they have started to increase the prices of goods, they have started to implement taxes without actually reducing other taxes, and they continue to mock us with kangkong, with the fact that even when harga barang turun, we don't praise them. But actually, our welfare is not very much in their hearts. And what happens is that we keep reading in the press one story after another about some minister's daughter's wedding being celebrated in grand style, some minister's birthday party being celebrated in so much splendor that he had to spend 120,000 ringgit doing that. Now, this is a question of living beyond their means, and is this something that we're angry about? They tell us to tighten our belts, and they continue to live lavishly. Now, this is an issue that we grapple with on a daily basis. This is something that has become a reality for all Malaysians. Now, what has that got to do with corruption? Now, living beyond the means in terms of public servants, in terms of ministers, is just one of the many aspects that we are concerned about. We're also concerned about the fact that many of the mega scandals that plague our country today. I was just trying to brief Pak Eri in that short time that the video was on. Pak Eri is our speaker from Indonesia and a former Indonesian Anti-Corruption Commissioner. He was asking me what scandal is this and what scandal is that. We have the PKFZ. Does anybody know who's responsible for the 12.5 billion ringgit that was lost?
Nobody.
Do we have an answer?
They're all
No.
innocent.
Do we know what happened to the Scorpion 540 million funds that was paid to Perimecca? Was that legitimately used? Who actually benefited from it? Who pocketed that? And then we have the famous NFC. Now what happened to that? We got the whistleblower being dragged to court. And we know that there is no whistleblower protection in this country, even though we have an ACTA. So there's something seriously wrong here. Who actually is responsible? And who needs to actually be accountable? Is there a justice system in our country that can actually allude to the fact that the corrupt should be punished and the corrupt will be punished? I think not, because no one seems to be responsible for all this money. And whose money is that? It's your money. It's my money. It's our money, and we have no idea what has actually happened to it. Now, this is the context. This is the context why many of us came together after the post-general elections scenario. There were people who were saying, yeah, it's so disappointing. Let's just get back, do our own thing. Let's go overseas. Let's study. Let's go work with some big corporate firm somewhere overseas. This is the time to get our lives back together. But believe it or not, there were so many people out there that said, hey, something's really wrong here. If we don't work in the next 4 years or in the next 5 years to actually repair the damage and repair the situation that's going wrong with our country, we are going to be headed for even worse times. Now, one thing is for sure, and one thing is for certain. It's really difficult to prove corruption. So why are we all here? What are we doing here if it's going to be really difficult to prove corruption? Especially corruption among the powerful, the elite. How do we catch them? We can't catch them. It's difficult to catch them. But I think the only answer lies with us. We have aspirations. We want a clean government, but how do we actually get to doing that? And my statement for today is that we cannot depend on anyone. I see a number of MPs, even the Selangor speaker is here, which is very promising because we know that there are people in policy-making positions who take this issue very seriously. But at the same time, we know that we have to depend on ourselves. We work with them, but we only have ourselves to depend on. We have to come together. We have to make sure that our government is actually accountable to us. And just a quote from Thomas Jefferson, it says, every experience has shown that even under the best forms of government, those entrusted with power have in time and by slow operations have perverted it into tyranny. Now we must make sure that although we see some semblance of things happening over and over again, and very much so with a government that has been in power for the last 50 years, this has definitely been converted into tyranny. And this is the era, this is the scenario in which we are living in. Now I just want to point out one example. Let's come out of Malaysia for a while. One example. Let us look at India. Let's look at India. There is so much going on in India in terms of mobilizing people power and empowerment to actually fight and combat corruption. Now, India is a very corrupt country, as much as Malaysia is a very corrupt country. But from a movement, there is now a political party which fights corruption as their main agenda. It's called the Common Man's Party. It's an interesting name because they want the common man to actually be at the center of fighting corruption. And this is the message for today. It is you and I that actually have that responsibility to fight corruption. Now, this party started to develop so much appeal The membership started growing, but it's no way that the party would be able to make inroads so quickly. But the point here is that they won the local government elections in New Delhi and even the chief minister's position, which is incredibly difficult in the context of such a vast country with so many people in there. But this has given us hope around the world. This has given us hope because if we can have politicians focus on combating graft and giving citizens participation and democratic participation a new life, a new hope, then I think this is something that we can do here. The launch of this center is like a drop in the ocean of a much bigger struggle, of a struggle that we actually have to live through for a long time. We have to gather here today. We have to gather in various different places because I believe we all represent a bigger phenomenon. We want to promote citizenship politics. We want to make sure that the decisions made are all transparent. And we know now that it isn't. We have a Freedom of Information Act in Selangor and Penang, but to be honest, I really don't know where that is at the moment. We are not utilizing it. YB Rajiv had actually put a test case to it. I hope you got your information. Yeah, and the onus is on us because in order to have information, in order to test the borders, we actually need to make sure that whatever has been promised to us is also delivered. Now, the challenge is enormous. I'm not saying this is going to be easy. But one thing I want to emphasize about C4 is that it will focus on two things. It will focus on public sector reform, which means we will look at public money. We will look at how our money is being spent, how our money is being abused, and how taxpayers' money is being actually utilized by the government. It will also work to ensure that we take on more work outside Kuala Lumpur, Petaling Jaya, Penang, Ipoh, that kind of urban centers. We need to actually start working with semi-urban, rural people. We have a director from Sabah. He is unable to be here today. So there is also going to be a greater emphasis on Sabah Sarawak as well as the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia, which means we need to go out, and in order to do that, this center and the work to fight corruption, there are various other NGOs that fight corruption, but together with civil society organizations, with politicians, with academics and the works, we need to actually develop our mass appeal. So for many people who actually say, is this going to be another talk show and we end it here? Let me say no. Because I think this is just the beginning. We will need to actually take the work outside. Now, as I was telling you just now, I need to end this speech by thanking a whole lot of people, because during this downtime, during this time post-general election, everybody feels that, okay, it's time to take a break. There were many, many people out there who said, no, let's work at things, let's get it going. And the energy around what is now called C4, before we were registered. And yes, we are properly registered, and guess what? We have the name C4 in our registration, okay? I think after this, maybe whoever wants to register as C4 probably cannot already. Okay, so they did not, well, whatever, but we have a very firm registration. I just want to thank several people because the energy is what I want to celebrate here. The energy is what I think we want to celebrate here, because each one is precious and each one actually pushed each other to say, okay, let's develop this center. Now first I'd like to thank my fellow energetic people who agreed to be directors. We have Ahmad Farouk, put up your hand. Richard Yeo. Ahmad Farouk is also the deputy chair of Bersih, so he's going to be responsible for a lot of street rallies and bringing the public out to express their discontent, because Bersih is really all about electoral fraud and about electoral corruption. So the agenda is very linked. Richard is a former Transparency International director. Simon Sipaun has a very large portfolio. He's the former State Secretary of Sabah, and he is also the former Deputy Chairman of Suhakam. And then we have advisors. Advisors don't formally come under C4, but they're extremely important because they offer different skills. We have Ambiga Sreenevasan. Thank you for saying yes. We have Edmund Bond. I don't know where he is. He promised to be here. We have Razlan Hadri, another very, very renowned lawyer, but he's in Australia at the moment and he offered his apologies. We have C.K. Ng from the private sector and whose contributions have been quite tremendous. We have Michael Soon, former ACCA chairman, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, he's a public chartered accountant and a former MPPJ councillor. So he knows a lot about public sector works and so on and so forth. So there are a couple of other people who have expressed interest to help. In the meantime, I must say thank you to the video team. There is Zuna, who actually drew the logo for us. Do you like the logo? Or did you see the logo just now? We'll flash it up for you again. Then we have make Fahmi Fazil's voice, if you all can recognize his voice, Fahmi Fazil's voice. Durian FM for doing everything almost for free. We have Patrick Teo to lend his incredible voice tonight. We have Pushpan Murugaya, who helped with the write-ups. I think you picked up a couple of documents on your way in. Vic Nazan and his team for doing all the FB, Facebook work for us. And finally, we want to thank Malaysia Kini, because this whole launch is riding on their public forum. It really is because Malaysia Kini as a media organization also works on good governance issues. So we thank them for giving us that space. Now we will be working with a whole lot of different organizations with MPs. And I must tell you that there's work in progress to build an anti-corruption coalition. That's coming up. So you're going to see even more energy around the work to combat corruption. But I am not going to say anything more in order not to preempt that. So again, the task ahead is really difficult. Another quote from my favorite Nelson Mandela: difficulties break some men, but it makes others. And it always seems impossible until it's done. And that message is for us. It really looks like it's really bad times now. But it will make us. It will make sure that we don't break. And it will make sure that this kangkong, even though it looks layu, will be our symbol to show that we are enthusiastic, we have energy, and we will continue to show the people in power who are the bosses. Thank you very much.